We've been missing you. Do you want to find the witch friends you've been missing? Do you want to participate in these conversations live? And do you want to support the work of recovering a true history of feminist ideas about magic? Do you want to hang out? Do you want an invite to Zoom together with Amy and myself every new moon, along with our hilarious, diverse, wise, queer, creative, anti-racist, science, and awe-loving coven? You must join the Missing Witches Patreon. It's pay what you can, and we can't wait to meet you there. Patreon.com/missingwitches.
You aren't being a proper woman, therefore you must be a witch.
Be a witch. Be a witch. Be a witch. Be a witch. Be a witch. Be a witch.
You must be a witch.
I'm so happy to see you.
Oh my gosh, so happy to be here. So glad that we could do this.
Me too. It's been so long since we spoke. You didn't get to hang with Amesy last time. She didn't get to bask in
I know.
you.
But it's good.
So
I've got a 3-year-old question here that's been burning. So.
It's been fermenting this whole time. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna take a deep breath and do it like a proper
Yes.
podcast open. And then we'll jump in with our 3-year-old questions and our questions from 3-year-olds and everything in
Yes.
between. Oh, I'm rolling my shoulders, listeners. I hope your shoulders are dropping a little bit as you step back into this space with us. Welcome, witches. Welcome, practitioners of all kinds. Welcome, snowflakes. Welcome, gardeners. Welcome, people in the park and the trees in the park and the lichen and the flowers and the snow and the dreams of all those things melding together, leading us into our crafting and our work of resistance and reenchantment. And if you're going to talk about resistance and reenchantment, and you're going to delve into the weaving of the web, and you're going to get inspired by Indigenous futurisms, then you couldn't talk with anyone better than Edgar, Fabián, Frías. And they're here with us today. They're back, and we're just like giggly and glowing already to be in circle together. So I hope that you feel in yourselves that you're sort of giggly and glowy and sort of simmering into this circle with us. Welcome back, my friend, my web friend.
Bless the webs that connect us. So grateful to be here. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. I'm feeling all the glowy, sparkly magic inside of me. And I'm hoping that the folks who are listening can feel into that too and know that we're all connected through that glow, through that web.
Yeah.
Certainly what first drew me to you as a personality and you as an artist is that beaming. It comes through the internet, this beaming glow. I mean, I've sent you 100 love letters by DM, so you know this, but just so our listeners know, and their children's children may also someday know, the beam is palpable. Please get on. If you're not already on Edgar's Instagram, do yourself a favor.
For your mental health. How has your practice been? How has your heart been? We spoke pre-pandemic days. How is your love? How is your work? How are you doing?
You know, I think like most folks, all over the place. I'm in my last semester at UC Berkeley in the MFA art practice program. So my art practice has definitely taken the forefront of my life. And I've been really just diving deep into it and trying to understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing. And, you know, and also being someone who does so many things, like trying to get a sense of what feels important, what feels like I should focus on in the next few years. And yeah, but it's definitely been a challenge. You know, this pandemic has really brought so much out into the light, and it's also really called upon our resources. I know that a lot of us are tired. A lot of us have had a lot of grief. A lot of us have been moving through so many shifting dynamics in our lives. I feel like socially and culturally, we're going through so many shifts, and that level of destabilization is super exciting. And I'm like leaning heavily into my like Gemini sun, and that loves uncertainty and not knowing what's going to happen. And also I know that some of us are yearning for stability and for some sort of certainty and scaffolding and structure. And so I also hold space for that too.
Yeah, I feel that very strongly in myself too. Like I'm excited and I also need to like limit my exposure to things in a much more intense way than I ever did before. Like my boundary work has to be so much more intense than before, because I'm just raw and scared and excited too. I noticed your bio has some words now around like ritual and resistance, or crafting and resistance. Is that something that's part of how you're thinking about that, negotiating that these days?
Yeah, I've definitely been sitting with the, the larger cultural implication of the work that we're doing, and the way that, as we've witnessed, the more that witches are stepping into their power, more and more people are feeling that permission, creating their own webs, their own networks, and also been really thinking a lot about craft and the role of craft in resistance and resilience, and really expanding what craft means, knowing that even what we're doing today is a craft, right? Like coming together digitally, we're holding space with all the people that are listening here, and just thinking of craft as something that we're all exploring and also transforming together. And I think that's something that's been really exciting, is witnessing the ways that people are really inspiring each other, and we're all learning from each other in so many different ways. And that to me feels like moving beyond that like individual artist myth, and really moving into more like collective consciousness that we're all creating together. I think we are a part of a huge movement that people are naming, but also I do think we're still at the tip of the iceberg of what's actually happening.
I think so too. What are some things you think that craft practice looks like, when it's web aware, when it's distributed, when it's resistance informed?
Yeah, it can take so many shapes. I think a lot about folks who are like organizing, who are using the internet to redistribute funds, to support different communities, to use magic to make connections, and also as folks who traverse through the digital sphere, really thinking a lot about what we do as craft too. And I think that's been a big growth place for me, is I have, as someone who works a lot with like archaic, indigenous, ancient technologies, I've also really come to understand that kind of more contemporary digital is also a big part of what I do. And I've been really honored to meet other indigenous artists who are working within the digital in many different ways, and who've really shared with me how the digital is its own craft. And I don't really think I thought of it that way. I feel like I've always thought of the digital, I don't know, I don't know where I relegated that to before, but it's almost like I'm really starting to understand that like time that we invest in the digital is a craft, and that it takes time. There's steep learning curves, and there's so much that you have to unfold and really process to be able to do what we do, right? To have these systems in place to do what we do.
And certainly we see this from you all the time. This post is a spell on Instagram. Like you've really taken this like digital world and solidified it, concretized it as like a magical practice. And something I really want to get to, but I mean, it's not a total non sequitur, is that I have a fascinating example of your work as resistance, as ritual. And that's you and the Golden Dome School did like sort of a reactionary ritual called the Resurrection of Care. Can you talk about the cremation of care just a little bit, and then what prompted all of you to do this sort of inverted mirror ritual?
So when I first heard about the cremation of care, I thought it was fake. I like couldn't believe that it was real. So just saying that first, in case when you hear this, you're like, what? So every year in Northern California, in a place called Bohemian Grove, they have a ceremony that is called the cremation of care, and it is done by some of the world's largest political, economic people. There are sometimes US presidents, sometimes large bankers who go, and they get really drunk and they burn things, and they burn a body. Some people have said it's a real body, other people say it's not, and they do this to destroy care. And the reason they want to destroy care is because care gets in the way of profit. And so when I first heard about it, like as I said, I was really in disbelief. And then I saw that there's a Wikipedia page about it. And the same day that I was told by Eliza Swan of the Golden Dome about this, I happened to hang out with my partner and a friend of his, and his friend grew up near Bohemian Grove and said, yes, it's very real. Everyone who lives there knows about it. They don't try to hide it. And so, of course, Eliza wanted to create something that would respond to this ritual. And the resurrection of care is done shortly after their cremation of care. And it's the community coming together to resurrect care and to do some counter magic. We've done it now for several years in many different ways during the pandemic. We did it on YouTube, so it's on there. You could access that at any point. And last year, we did it in Los Angeles for the first time in person since the pandemic began. So it's definitely taken many shapes, and it's kind of been all over the place.
Yeah, I just absolutely love this notion, because a lot of us, most of us, let me say, we turn to magic when we feel helpless, when we feel like, maybe we've run out of concrete activism. I'm using scare quotes, everybody. We've run out of letter writing campaigns, and then we turn to magic as like that sort of final push, that Hail Mary of like, I give this to someone else. So for me, it's so enthralling, this notion of counter ritual, of saying, this is what these people are doing, and so this is what we're going to do. I just, it gets me so excited because we're all looking at these things, and there are so many things that we're looking at right now that are coming into our feeds and coming into our lives and our consciousness that have always been there. But like you say, things are more visible, and it's demeaning. And again, they want us to feel hopeless, like you say, like caring goes against profit. So if we can take that bad feeling that we get from witnessing these things and turn them around into our own force of positive change, this is, to me, like such a contemporary form of magic, to really be like, no, I am going to be a power against this. It's a very powerful no. Can you speak to the power of no, maybe?
Yeah, I think, I really liked how, it was mentioned before that boundaries are really important right now, right? And I definitely feel like no, as people say, is a complete sentence. And it is incredibly powerful to put up those boundaries, and to also, as you're naming, to alchemize and transmute energy. I think that art practice, ritual, ceremony, community building, those are all practices that can really transmute energy and change energy. And some of my most powerful spells have come from exactly those moments where I feel disempowered, I feel angry, I feel like there's no hope. And I turn to my practice as a space to really allow that energy to become something else. And so much of this society expects us to accept things or to feel that disempowerment in the face of things, and being able to set boundaries and also being able to create something new and to potentially even offer another vision, another possibility, that is so incredibly powerful. And I think that's what a lot of people are so hungry for, because they are so banking on us just being exhausted and overwhelmed. And there's so many witches who are holding that light. And I think that's why so many people are turning towards witches.
I think so too. I think it's so profound the way that this hierarchy of capitalism, patriarchy, is so intent on making us feel alone and exhausted. And so having those moments where you truly feel amplified, that you feel like even if you're under 6 feet of snow in pandemic era and you're by yourself, that this weaving that you're doing is connected, that your light is. So I want to tell you and then ask you about your most powerful experiences with spells. I think it was a resurrection of care that I did here. It was one that was sort of shared with the community to do. I walked with a friend counterclockwise, like, we had a fire lit and we were storming and yelling and throwing things into a cloud, and then we started walking it clockwise, and it was dark and it was summer and it was windy, and we were building up our dreams and our wishes. And then right over us, this is the only time it's ever happened here, a flying squirrel, which they're extremely rare here, but they exist, flew over us and landed like on a chair and just sat there long enough for us to both be like, shit, that really happened. Like, we didn't imagine that. That was 100% real. Sat and looked at us and scampered away like, no, I'm not a bat. Like, get a good look. And ran away. And it was one of these moments that we always go back to, of like, the natural world is winking at us that we're not alone, you know? So I want to hear stories from you when you said, you know, my most powerful experiences with magic have been ... If there's any you feel like you could share.
Yeah, I think one that comes forward, it feels connected to the Golden Dome. And when I had finished my graduate program, in Portland, Oregon, for clinical mental health counseling, I decided to take a moment to be in ceremony by myself. And I, for the first time ever, consumed psilocybin mushrooms. And I had a really profound experience, a really profound vision that fully transformed my life. And one of the visions that I had, among many, was this vision of witches and visionaries and artists, like holding that light that we've been talking about. And I just kept getting the vision of that light being held, and people and communities and animals all turning towards that energy, and things starting to get reorganized. And I got a really big, profound message around the wounding that's happened to our communities by dislocating the witch from the center and dislocating the visionaries from the center of community. And I really got the message very loud and clear from the mushroom kingdom that the witches were being brought back into the center. They were being brought back into community. And it was just such a profound experience for me. And years later, on the anniversary of this day, because I remember I remember this day so clearly, on the anniversary of this day, I realized that I had been invited by Eliza Swan to the Golden Dome to go present a workshop on divination. And it was the first time that I was really communing with other witches and really seeing other witches being supported for their work. It was like the first time I was receiving money to teach about divination, like the first time that I realized that there was a huge community of artists that were really excited about this. And it really felt profound to have a personal journey like that during a time when I still felt really alienated for being a witch and being an artist. And I know so many of us who have found each other through these webs, you know, whether they're digital or mycelial webs, like the many of us who found each other all really do speak to that, also that moment of feeling really alienated or really isolated. And then the joy that comes from finding each other and realizing that there's so many of us. And I think that's one of the most profound moments, because I do feel like my entire world changed from that moment. It went from, this is something I do on my own, to, oh wow, no, this is something I do in community. And of course, I think that's transformed so much with the pandemic, and it still continues. I think we're just really relying on the digital spheres so much more now to continue to do this work, to continue to build.
And so what are some practical ways for listeners to find and support that web, to feel connected?
Yeah, there's so much you could do. I think one thing that's really incredible for witches is that we get to self-ordain. We get to really decide that we are witches, that we are the ones we've been looking for. And so if you're feeling disempowered or you're feeling alone, I think being able to step into your role, in whatever role you decide for yourself, and then being able to look around and see who else is doing similar work. And I know so many witches are really open to having conversation and to connecting, and we want to build community. And so this is a whole other conversation, but I know that, many witches exist on social media, many witches exist on Discords or on different groups. And so finding those people that you really resonate with, and then seeing who they're connected to, and kind of maybe working through the digital webs to kind of follow the traces. Definitely, if you find someone that you're really excited about, people who are doing work that you're really into, find ways to support them, attend people's workshops, attend their events, give them donations when they are doing fundraising. There's so many ways to support these communities. And I know that a lot of these communities are always creating possibilities for engagement and also like thinking about engagement in different ways. I know there are witches who organize art events. There are witches who organize tarot fundraisers. So there's lots of ways to kind of enter in and start building those relationships.
I love how you took the sort of self-promotion question and made it about how you can support everybody else.
There's this back and forth, really an Ouroboros of energy when you find people who are holding the light, to continue that metaphor, because you are supporting them and you're supporting their cause, but you're also getting that shine.
Mm-hmm.
You're also getting that warmth and shine. And a word that I've been using probably about 1,000 times more since we started this project than before is validating. It's so validating to find people when you feel like you're alone. It's so validating to go and see, yeah, there are people who are thinking what I'm thinking or doing what I'm doing and maybe doing it better, and I can learn from them. But also, while validating your own experience, like learning to do better while still validating your own experience. That's been one of the most amazing things about the digital web for me. Again, living in the woods, we have a lot of experience with sort of nature magic, but
right.
Sometimes we lose out a bit on the human contact aspect. I say all the time, like living in the woods without the internet is not, I don't know. Like I'm a woods woman and I can do all the things, but I don't know if I would have been able to do this, say, 30 years ago or whatever, if I had been that kind of, it's still, having grown up without the internet, it's still such an amazing, magical tool for me that it's like Pee-wee's Playhouse with the video phone, when I was growing up, and we would watch Pee-wee's Playhouse and we would say, oh, imagine if we had a video phone. Like I still get those Pee-wee's Playhouse style feelings when I interact with people online. And to me, that's magic. To me, that's like how technology creates magic.
Yeah, I like to see projects and people that hold on to that utopian ideal and possibility in the internet, that thing that we sort of flickeringly see sometimes, that's there despite a lot of capitalism's encroachment and the alt-right encroachment of online spaces, holding on to some of those ideals, those open source ideals.
Holding on to the magic, holding on to imagination, into possibility. And I'd love to hear what question you were going to just ask.
I was hoping that you could talk to us a bit about portals. I feel like the internet is one. I watched a wonderful video that you did with Ilva Radoszewski about portals. So can you guide us maybe toward how we might open portals in our own lives?
Portals are infinitely accessible. They can be opened in any moment and any space, and you don't need any technology. And although it can help sometimes to have technology to support you, and essentially portal is you're opening up a space of possibility, opening up a space of imagination, and a portal can connect you to anything. And thinking about the utopian, or thinking about the freedom, the gift of being able to imagine other things into existence, portals are those openings into other possibilities. And my first experience with a portal that I had was when I was 14, and I share about this a lot. I saw some artwork at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. And when I was looking at the artwork, I saw the physical work, and also something else happened. Something else opened up in front of me, and it was very much my ancestors, my guides, even though I didn't have that language at that time, really wanted me to see beyond what was physically in front of me, and wanted me to feel the disorientation, the confusion that can happen when we are met with something that pierces through the veil. And that is the gift of the portal, is that it allows us to see beyond the 3D space. And, we've been talking about capitalism and the ways that we get to build something new and create something new, co-create something new. And I think one of the biggest lessons that I've learned by being in witch community is that it can be incredibly healing to really see other people's success as your own, to really see other people's growth as your own, and to move beyond the self and to move into a more communal space where we're all holding something together. And so portals can even open you up into other possibilities of existing. And I really do believe that collectively, as witches, many of us are holding space to open up a portal into another future, one that does start to move away more and more from this incredibly archaic system of capitalism that is, as we know, no longer serving us. And I really see the work that we're doing to unlearn things, to relearn things, to reconnect to things that we've been forced to disconnect from. All of that work is completely a part of opening up this portal, opening up this space of possibility. And to get a little more practical, you can open up a portal in ceremony, you can open up a portal by creating artwork. And every time you open up your phone or the internet, your computer, you're opening up a portal of possibility as well. And it's so recursive. It doesn't go just one way. So as you're peering out, you're also being seen as well. And so know that you are having an impact. The work that you're doing is having an impact, and that other people are perceiving what you're doing, and you're really adding to the collective. And I think that's also the power of portals, is that they can connect us all.
Could you connect that idea of imagining, incanting, portaling new possibilities to the idea of Indigenous futurisms? I've been thinking about them as like a hyper sigil, Black futurisms, Afro futurisms, Indigenous futurisms with the language of sigils. Can you talk about how you think about that these days?
Yeah, I'm actually working for my thesis show. I'm working on a vision. You brought up the white supremacist alt-right encroachment earlier, and I unfortunately have had my immediate family fall into like a QAnon algorithm. That's how I'm like calling it.
Sorry.
And yeah, and it's been incredibly frustrating and heartbreaking. And I have felt very stuck in that energy. And so I've turned to my Indigenous ancestors for support. I have been connecting with some sacred ceremonial tools of my ancestors, and I've been bringing them into the future, into the present, and imagining a place of care in the future. And that's really what I'm working on, is creating this place of care. I'm not actually making the space, but I'm making the possibility of the space. And I think that's where Indigenous futurism and Afrofuturism offer us so much magic, is they give us the ability to weave with our ancestors, to create with our ancestors, and to also bring forward our cultures into the future and into places where maybe they were not meant to exist, at least with the white supremacist colonialist frameworks that have existed. And that's been really powerful, is to reimagine objects, customs, practices, and think about how they can exist on the internet, how they can exist digitally, how they can exist in a way that more and more people can have access to them and to commune with them. And I think that is so inspiring to me, to be able to imagine possibilities even beyond what I can really see right now in the present. And it's also helped me feel more space to breathe around that stuckness that I've been feeling. I really do believe in the power of our magic and of our art to transform and to move energies. And I'm so hopeful that this vision that I'm creating for the future will support what's happening for me right now in the present. And I do know that our ancestors have all been speaking so much to us, and I think many of us have been called to really reflect our awareness, our energies back towards our ancestors, because that's been a big part of the dislocation that's happened because of capitalism. Is many of us have been separated from those cultures and those lands and those lineages. And of course, as most people know, when I say ancestor, I do mean blood ancestor, familial land ancestor, cultural ancestor, and I also mean spiritual ancestor, queer, transgender, expansive ancestor, animal, mineral, plant kin ancestor. I'm very open and expansive when it comes to how I perceive ancestors too.
Yeah, I've been really grounding myself in this idea of care too, in a really, I mean, how many of us are in this moment right now? We've had white supremacists camped out in our fucking capital here in Canada. We've been under an US funded invasion and just the terror and the fear in everyone's voice. You see people who are already on the edge before, and we're just like, how can this be? How can this be? How can this be? How can this be? And then you have that friend from high school or the uncle or beloved cousin, like people sort of slipping into those algorithms, as you put it so perfectly. And it's a lot about boundaries for me, and it's a lot about believing that a vision of care, and for me that comes to like guaranteed livable income for all, land back, indigenous led protection of environment, land spaces, really practical. I think that the idea of care is really fucking practical. And I do think that is like, I want that for those people too. I want that for my racist uncle too. I don't want to have him to live in fear and trying to pay off his dental surgery. Anyway, I'm saying this to the listeners on the line, to who I know all of us have been touched by this fear, just to amplify this vision of Edgar's and this space that he's making, and send love to his family too, that maybe there's some unstuckness there, and feeling that for all of us. You mentioned queer and non-binary ancestors. I mentioned to you in a message, I keep getting messages from people who are like, can you guide me to non-binary witchcraft? Please find my friend Edgar, Fabián, Frías as your portal, much better than me, into this world, because you have been such a guide for me for that. I turn to your work a lot for understanding what that can mean. Insert question, can you talk about it? Please expand.
I feel really blessed to be connected to so many queer, trans, and gender expansive folks, and to imagine what it could mean to have a spirituality where we are really connecting and communing with our ancestors. And yeah, I think that's been such a big gift of the internet, is to be able to find ourselves and to be able to reconnect with each other and to be able to hold space together. I think that that's been so profound for me, because that's another wounding that happens aside from being a witch and from being a weirdo artist. Like I also grew up incredibly alone and not able to see myself in society. The only queer and trans people I knew were people that were like demonized essentially growing up, because I grew up very conservative in a Christian household. And so to be able to be that person to support other people is such a blessing, and to be able to be very public is such a blessing. Of course, it does come with its own level of vulnerability, and at the same time, I understand how alone it can feel to not feel like your existence is even real or valid. And I think that's what pushes us all, who do this work, to step into the ring, into the center, and to say like, hi, I'm here, even if it does mean that we might have some people who don't see what we see, or who are afraid, who might come and attack us, or who might be like upset at seeing us. And we have all seen how much anti-trans legislation and how much fear-mongering there has been around the queer and trans community, and as much as there's been around like the Black Lives Matter movement, and around the also expansion of rights for women. And I think there's just so much fear that's being fed into people's consciousness. And I think this is also kind of going back to what we were talking about, holding the light. And of course, witches hold the light and the dark. And I think there's a way that sacred practices allow us to access other states of awareness And in some of these states of awareness, we're able to transcend some of the binary thinking that this society really forces onto us. And that is where I do develop that empathy that you're sharing for people who are really stuck, like honestly, really stuck within fear-based, separation-based binary ways of thinking, and really starting to understand like, wow, we are literally living in different dimensions of possibility, of what's real. And knowing that, people who do get reactionary and who feel like they have to fight and attack, that is coming from a place of lack, of insecurity, of fear. And I'm hopeful for the magic that we're all weaving, that, we are transforming hierarchies. We are transforming age-old, societal structures around gender, around power, that are so needed to be restructured.
We've been talking so much about fear and anger, and it feels like those are the only acceptable emotions for the times that we're living in, and to the point where it feels like joy is either like a guilty pleasure or a transgressive act. So can you talk a little bit about something that I think you embody, which is like transgressive acts of joy?
Yes. I fully, I think I've actually had this conversation a lot in my MFA program, because I do feel like some people really get fixated on the idea that revolutionary art or revolutionary actions have to look a certain way. And I'm really inspired by people, for example, like the nap ministry. There's so many amazing artists who are using pleasure and rest and respite and joy.
Oh my God, the nap ministry. I just want to say, oh my God, I love their work so much.
So much. Yes, so inspired. So inspired. And yeah, I'm thinking of like other ways that we can really be revolutionary. And, one of the things also, Adrienne Marie Brown, right? Like pleasure activism is so profound and really does move so much energy. It's such deep magic. And I think play and joy and even confusion, all these other emotions that allow for mutability, for flexibility. And I even know in like group settings, whenever I run groups, there's always this like way that like at the beginning of a group, whenever someone makes a joke or there's something humorous, you could feel the shift in our bodies where we all like unite a little bit more and our nervous systems sync up. And I really feel like art can also do that. Art can help kind of move things around that maybe have felt stuck or calcified and needing a little bit of that support to shift. And so that's also why I like to make art that is joyful, playful, that has pleasure in it, that attracts you, and also art that will confuse you, that will move you to question. And I think all of those are so important in art. And I definitely know there's a time and place for really direct artwork that is really like concrete about what it's saying and all that. And I know that that's like not what excites me as an artist too. I love people laughing at my work. I love people not knowing if they should laugh at my work. I think all of those are really incredible responses that bring up that liminal space that I think is so fun in a way to work with. Because I think as, witches, we love the liminal, and the liminal shows up in so many different ways.
Permission to laugh, I think, is like a great gift that we can give each other.
Yes. I think permission to be confused. I think that's also like a big, that's something that I feel right now. I'm a teacher at UC Berkeley, and I've really noticed how art can be so challenging for people who have been indoctrinated by the system of education, because there is this like almost like, there's a requirement, and I'm using that with air quotes, like in the system to understand things like really quickly, or to like have a soundbite for something. And art really pushes against that. Art is so layered and complex and filled with contradictory meanings, and all of that really can be so shocking to the system. And so I've noticed that in working with students, because right now I'm teaching an introductory art class that is working with both students who are excited about art and want to become art majors, and also with students who don't really know about art and are taking the class as a requirement for their other programs. And so I think I'm really sitting with how much it's disorienting for students to be met with this other way of understanding within the space of academia and institution.
And certainly for us witches who are contending with magic and people who don't understand that, and therefore it's like, I don't understand, therefore it doesn't exist, which is like another whole leap, right? So I love this idea of like getting comfortable with confusion. You know, we talk a lot about knowing and not knowing, but being comfortable with confusion is something that I'm really gonna dig my teeth into.
So my dad volunteers in the theater department at a Waldorf elementary school, and he was telling me that it's like a core practice of Waldorf teachers that when a child asks a question, instead of answering, they say, I wonder. And so I've been doing this with our 3-year-old, which elicits like the most elaborate world building, right? Like, she's like, why is there snow? I wonder. I think it's because the wolf walkers, they're angry, but they're hungry, and there's a giant. And you're like, yeah, probably. I don't know. But I'm trying to like lean into this space of I wonder, and I'm gonna do like a stereotypical interviewer pivot and be like, what are some things you're wondering about, Edgar? Tell us what is opening up wonder for you?
Oh my gosh, so much. Yeah, I made a video on my YouTube channel about this, but I've really witnessed like how the internet is really shifting. And you brought up Ilva earlier, but Kiki, who's also in the Living Altar, brought up in a podcast I did a few months ago that the internet is in its Saturn return, and just thinking about how much we've all changed during Saturn return and how transformative and painful and embarrassing and all that stuff that our Saturn returns can be. Just thinking about what is going to happen after the internet moves through its Saturn return is something that feels so scary and exciting. And I'm definitely in conversation with that too, because I think we're all affected by this. And so I've been seeing how much, for example, like how much witches are kind of, understanding that we've been using certain platforms to like spread our work, and knowing witches are feeling called to like expand upon the networks that they connect with or find new ones, create new ones. And also I do feel like there's a big thing happening around labor and around these hierarchies of value that have been placed on labor. And I've definitely been sitting with like how much we feed these social media companies that are becoming billionaires off of our labor, and how we do so much of that labor for free, knowing that it does connect us to people, it does like support our businesses and our practices. And at the same time, like, we're not becoming millionaires, we're not becoming billionaires. There are other people who are really, really receiving the benefit of that work. And so I do feel like that's also something that's coming up alongside all the other issues of labor that are coming up, of valuing who gets valued. Do artists get valued? Do people who support the economy in other ways get valued? What does it mean to be an essential worker? Like, what does it mean to have a quote unquote no skill job? Like, all of these things are they're really mutable, and they're also being brought forward into community to really be talked about, because there's so much of it that has been so problematic and just used as a way to disenfranchise people, and also to exploit people and to help other people become rich. And so there's so much of that I'm like just feeling a lot of excitement around, and also feeling a lot of uncertainty and fear too, of like, these are larger conversations that are starting to happen right now that are going to become more and more important. And yeah, there's definitely a lot more too, I feel, but those are just a couple of things that I can think of.
I mean, yeah, you've sort of lightly touched on these enormous questions of our time. I thought that was such an interesting observation that they made about the internet being in its Saturn return, because it sure does feel awkward. It sure does feel weird. It sure does feel odd. And I I'm optimistic, but it feels strange. I do want to open it up since I can see members of our coven here. We have weavers and stitchers right here with us. If anyone wants to unmute and just respond or ask anything, we're actually in circle in communion together, so I welcome you to do so.
I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to say how much I've been appreciating the conversation while I've been listening. I always find Missing Witches podcast and coven a great place to learn. I've heard Edgar before, so I was pretty excited that this actually worked out, that I could join in this time because I knew it was going to be great conversation. So do appreciate that. It's been a difficult month between what's going on out in the world. So this has been a great conversation to be listening to and inspires hope.
Yeah, to me, that's Edgar's message all day long. It's like, I never feel so much hope as I do when I'm engaging with your work, specifically, Edgar. Again, it's like, it's joyful, but it's also revolutionary. It's welcoming, but it also has its boundaries. You are having an impact by making us feel like we are having an impact. And I know I speak for the whole coven when I say we're just so grateful to exist at the same time on the same continent of all of the billions of years that we could have been existing, and to be in this moment, in this circle, in the world with someone like you. It really is such an inspiration. Inspiration is not a big enough word. If any of you can come up with a better word than inspiration, please let me know.
I'm so honored to receive your words, both of you. Thank you so much. And yeah, just really grateful to the ways that we've been led to be here and to find each other and to continue to find other people to weave into our webs. I think that's, I love, earlier you sharing about the story that, your 3-year-old was sharing around the snow. And like, I very much someone who at some point in my life had to decide if I was going to believe in magic or not. And I really do feel like so much of society, especially going to academic, higher education, and also being, surviving in capitalism, so much of society told me to like let go of my dreams and let go of this idea of magic. And in spite of that, my ancestors kept waking me up in the middle of the night, kept coming back to me and telling me like, no, there's another reality here. There's another reality that you can also make and create. And the power of our stories, the power of our vision is so incredible. And I've witnessed revolutionary change in my own personal life since I've started to really deepen and lean into magic. And I've witnessed so many transformations happen for myself and so many of my friends from magic. And I think that's like why I spread that message too, is like, because I know that I'm not that special. I know that like I have just been listening to the guidance that's been coming in. And so I really encourage people to listen to those, flying squirrels that come over us, to listen to them, to see them, to spend time with them, because those are sacred messages that really can support us in moving beyond the false system that we're forced to orient towards all the time. There are other elements that are wanting us to orient towards them. And I think that is something that witches are so incredible at gifting other people, is like that ability to say, okay, let's turn towards our breath. Let's turn towards the fire. Let's turn towards sacred, ancestors who are here. And that is such a gift in the midst of what we're in.
To me, the most academic, learning approach you can take is to be open to the idea of possibility. That's why it's so shocking to me when I encounter people who think that these are opposites. We're learning all the time. We're learning new and old modes of thinking, and we're discovering things, and then we're discovering, oh, maybe, dinosaurs had feathers and not scales. Like, we're just constantly having to be open to the possibilities. So to me, it's the most, schoolish thing in the world, to just be open to the idea that we don't know everything.
I know. And I think part of it is that there are paradigms that are guiding the system that, one thing that comes up as you're sharing that is when I was at Portland State University, I was studying clinical mental health counseling, and I was also studying interpersonal neurobiology. And it's a neuroimaging based research practice that is very interdisciplinary. And one thing that I noticed is that because they're attempting to explore other paradigms that are not about mechanistic separation and binary thinking, that are more about systems and interconnection, that they were relegated to the quote unquote woo, which, and they weren't using that in a positive way. They were, relegating it to a place where, because it wasn't fitting into the mechanistic system of thinking, it was seen as not valid, even if they were using like MRI machines and all that. And that to me was so interesting, how paradigms can really block us from really understanding something and really seeing the complexity of life. And I think about that so much because there's so much that we don't understand because of this myopic kind of paradigm that we've all been forced to experience. And I think witchcraft and magic and art, they're all possible realms, and mystical practices, wisdom traditions have all asked us to look at the world in that way, in a systems, in a relational way. And I think that's like where they're also a threat to the system too, right? And that's why they get demeaned and devalued.
Exactly. I mean, colonialism has attempted to erase thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years of accumulated knowledge. But these ancestors, however you interpret that word, are finding ways to remind us or to tell us, like, they didn't put it in any books and they tried to kill everyone who knew how to do this, but I'm sending you this information in a dream or in a vision or in a download thought that seemed to have come from nowhere.
My background, I studied expressive art therapy, and while I am not practicing as an expressive arts therapist, it definitely, all of what I learned plays a big part in my magic and in my art. So I love getting to hear you talk whenever, wherever.
Thank you so much. And I'm so glad you're here. And I think expressive arts is such a powerful modality. And just in the same way that if you're an artist and you're not practicing, you're always an artist. You're always doing that work. And we just go through different cycles,
We'll make sure that you can see Rachel's art. It's quite
yeah,
rad.
oh my gosh. Would
really
love to
beautiful.
see.
Yeah, we'll make sure you get to see. Because it's just nice to see the weaving, the weaving in practice and the weaving in reality. Sorry, I'm glad.
That's okay. I was going to say, I'm loving the God's Eye is behind you, Edgar. So
thank you so much. Yes. I've been connecting so much with them, and really, we talked about portals. I think God's Eyes are portals too. And I really loved what, we've been talking about here, just the way that ancestors come through those portals and find ways. And, I think that's also why many of us are being called to step into these roles, is our ancestors are doing that work. They're really guiding us. And it's something that really makes me believe in possibility beyond this system, is that there are things that cannot be destroyed as much as you try to suppress and kill and erase. There are ways that this knowledge, this wisdom, this tradition will continue. And yes, it will transform and mutate and become different practices, and it will still be connected to that sacred lineage. And I think that's what makes me believe in a world beyond this one, is that I know I've witnessed through my own life and through other people's lives that there's something so powerful that we are all tapping into and being guided by. And I think that's it's such a gift to be a part of that, and to be able to like hold space and meet other people who are also validating that. I think validation is so needed, especially when the rest of the world is trying to tell you that what you're doing is foolish or doesn't make sense. We're all holding that vision together.
Yeah, we're holding up that mirror for each other of what's inside of us. And the natural world is holding it up around us too. And our ancestors are holding it up around us. I'll tell you this story. So I was hiking near here, walls of snow, trees covered in snow, snowy day. Just all snow all the time. And I stopped by this one beech tree. So I think it's a beech. It keeps its leaves. They die, but they stay on it. And so they become these like rattles in the woods. So I stopped by this beech and it's like rattling and talking and sort of having a moment. And I ask it, you know, is there anything that I need to hear right now? And it's sort of just gently rattling. It's quiet. Nothing's coming through. And sort of nod and like turn to walk away. And then I notice on this tree branch covered in snow, we've had snow for like 5 months. There is one perfect dandelion seed with the white dandelion floof, like sitting on the snow. It's not possible. There are no dandelions. Everything is covered in snow as far as the eye can see. Where has it been? Has it been in the air for 6 months? Like where has it been, you know? And I was like, how odd, how weird, how beautiful. Like took a picture, walked 10 steps and was like, oh shit, that was the message. I got it. You know, I don't always get it right away, but it was there, you know. And so I'll close with this last question for you. We did this last time, maybe you'll remember. And your answer to this question last time ended up on the last page of our book. So I don't know if we've adequately thanked you for the gift that you gave us then and that you've given all our readers since, but thank you for the gift of that spell of grounding and protection. So same question, is there a ritual that's helping you right now? Something that you feel like you could share with our listeners?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I really have been leaning into play and the magic of play. And when I say that, I mean that, you know, I have been very process oriented when it comes to my art making. And I think that right now I've really been allowing myself to be led by my hands and be led by the colors that feel exciting and the shapes that feel joyful. And so I feel like I'm returning back to like a part of my art practice that I feel like I was shamed for when I was really young, because I'm doing a lot of drawing and painting, and those were things that like I was really like shamed for as a kid, and realizing how much I love to draw and paint. And I'm doing it digitally, of course, since I do so much work digitally. But I been really sitting with like how healing it is to play and to channel through play. And yeah, so I really just want to invite people to, you know, even if it's for 30 minutes, to craft a place for you to play and to not have, as much as possible, to not have goals, but just to really open up that space for your hands to really lead you, to your body to lead you, to guide you. And just to, you know, as that story that you just shared around the floof on top of the snow, like to be surprised in those moments where you realize something comes through that could not have come through the maybe more linear or organized process, you know. And yeah, so I've just been really witnessing that, the possibility that comes through, and also how much you can become a vessel for your ancestors to speak. And I think also connected to that, I've been really witnessing how much when we come together here, like we are today in community, we also become vessels. And I really do feel our ancestors speaking through us and what we've been sharing. And that's something I love about podcasts, both as a listener and as a speaker in podcasts, is that I really do get moved into an altered state where I sometimes forget what I'm saying, and sometimes feel like there's a part of me that comes up that feels like it needs to have things to say, or I need to know what I'm going to say. And I've really learned to also let my voice lead and let the words emerge. And that's also been profound to me. And it really does make me believe that we are conduits, and that we are connected to something so much deeper than us that can allow us to rest a little bit, allow us to open up space a bit, so that we don't have to feel so much pressure around ourselves. And that's been so healing too, to not feel like I have to be an expert, not feel like I have to know what I'm going to say, and just really show up and be present with people, and to tap into that beautiful collective nervous system that we're all holding here today, and knowing that that's going to support that process of channeling. And so, yeah, knowing that channeling is a collective thing, and that we're always in collaboration. And so even if you're at home by yourself coloring, you're in relationship, you're in collaboration.
Thank you for that. I feel that so deeply. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time and your generosity and your work. I hope that you feel us, our web, loving you and supporting you and easing tensions around you, sending love to the algorithms that have ensnared some of us. We're sending care to those, we're sending love to
Yes.
those, we're calling those people back into the circles of care. We're sending love to each other in our tired eyes. We're sending love. We really are. Our chronic illnesses and our chronic anxieties. We're sending light to all those things, and play to all our hands. And just so much thanks.
We can resurrect care.
Yes.
We're doing
Thanks,
it. We're doing it now.
We're doing it. We're doing it right now.
We're doing it now. Yes.
We're doing it well.
You must be a witch.
Here are a couple tiny, quick, free things that you could do right now to help the Missing Witches Project stay afloat and grow. The old rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast on Apple or wherever you listen. Honestly, truly, it helps so much. And even better, share it with a friend. Share it with someone who might love it. Let's weave this web together and gather all our kin. Thanks, and blessed fucking be.